Howdy, I'm Mike Penfold, and this is Our Montana. Today, we're going to talk about the Yellowstone River. You know, it's quite an asset we have here in Billings with this river right at our boundaries. You know, for years we kind of took it for granted and tried to push it away from us, but it's a real asset to us now. We think about Riverfront Park and Two Moon Park, and we got a brand new John Dover Park being built down the river here, and all the recreation that it's giving us with a new access site here on the river. But it's an asset that we will always appreciate, and it's an economic asset too. I mean, our three refineries wouldn't exist without this river there being able to provide them water. Our sugar beet plants takes water to process those sugar beets. And as a matter of fact, how are you going to grow sugar beets without Yellowstone River water? You don't. So it's an important asset there. We get our water from there, keeps our lawns green in the summertime, so it's just an important part of our lives. And it's got a long history too. I mean, you think about at the end of the Pleistocene, the first people came into North and South America, came down that ice-free corridor along the Rocky Mountains. And they were right here along the Yellowstone River. They became the Indian people and the tribes that lived successfully for thousands of years here, right here on the Yellowstone. And then you've got the trappers who came up and took all the beaver out, and you've got Lewis and Clark coming down the Yellowstone River. And now we're living here along this same river with all this kind of a history. You know, we haven't always been good to this river. We've abused it in a lot of different ways, but it's still a fine river. I mean, 700-mile long river. It's the longest undammed river in the United States, except for the Yukon. That's longer. It starts in the high mountains of the Rocky Mountains, a gravel-based river at the bottom, and it flows on out. And we've got some of the finest tributaries of any river that you could help. Stillwater to Bighorn, gets down to the Tongue. It's different characters of river, but you know, we didn't take care of it. And now we're trying to do a better job of that. And a lot of times we threw old car bodies along the banks and try to keep the river contained. The river doesn't like to be contained. It needs room to roam. But now these old cars are getting dumped into the river. The river doesn't give up. It just keeps ripping them apart and putting them in the bottom, ripping up the bottoms of boats and things like that. I've got with me a couple of people today who've done, I would say, have spent more time on the Yellowstone River than anybody I know. I don't think anybody else spends more time. Jack Sterling is with the National Smoke Jumpers Group. He heads that up, and he gets volunteers from the retired smoke jumpers. And Kayhan Ostovar, who heads up the Yellowstone Research Center and is a professor of environmental science at Rocky Mountain College. These guys do more work on the Yellowstone River and trying to bring it back and repair it. Welcome, you guys.
Thanks.
It's so good to see you.
Thanks for having us, Mike.
You know, Kayhan, how long have I been trying to get you on this program?
It's been a few years now, yes.
Tell me, how did you start working on this river?
You know, it's a good question. I really appreciate your introduction about just the history of this river, right? Because we're dealing with a long legacy of abuse, as you've mentioned. And years ago, I read an article about a single guy on the Mississippi who, all on his own, just started saying, "I'm tired of seeing this stuff." And he just had one boat. He would go out and just start picking things up. And now that project has become the longest running and by far the most volume, millions of pounds of material. And they have huge crews and multiple boats and cranes and all sorts of equipment and experience. So that was one of the things that inspired me. I organized the first cleanup in 2007, the year before I started teaching at Rocky Mountain College. And we had 2 rafts and 3 canoes and a dog and about 6 people. And it's grown ever since then. This We just finished our 18th year this year.
18 years, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and you know, in 2008, we started at the college doing these cleanups, and then really, it kind of, I think, really started moving forward in 2011, or after 2011. So we had the big oil spill, the ExxonMobil oil spill, Silvertip pipeline breach at Laurel, Montana, caused an incredible amount of damage to the ecosystem. And that encouraged me to work with other faculty at Rocky Mountain College and really a lot of other community members to create what we call the Yellowstone River Research Center, which is at Rocky Mountain College. And that's really helped us leverage community support and awareness. And I think a big part of what we do, we try to raise funds for student-focused research to gain more baseline information, and hopefully more research about other emerging threats to the river.
I tell you what, one of these days I want to get you back and just talk about research that you've been doing here. You're doing some good stuff there.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, and you know, a lot of what we're focusing on is sentinel species to help us learn about what might be happening to the river with chemicals and other things. But it's allowed us to really focus students and then engage with community members like Jack's group, your group, Our Montana, and many, many others, both hospitals and many of the refineries, the Stillwater Mine. Lots of groups are contributing now and helping in many different ways with volunteers and funding.
It's a big, pretty darn good effort now, isn't it?
I think it's, I believe we're the largest cleanup in the state now, probably by volume, and probably longest running as well. There's a lot of other cleanups happening, which is great, and we encourage, you know, people to get engaged in their community, and that's what we're trying to instill in students. So all our students, part of their financial award for summer research is that they engage with community service. And so our service really is tied to this river. Students will spend time every week, actually. They go out with Jack or me on the river doing research or doing cleanup work. And so I think what we're trying to instill is that they can realize that they can make a difference, right? In today's age, with so much technology and so much information, it's really hard to know, you know, to realize that one person can start to make a difference in a community.
It's kind of good to see those kids out there working. You know, I want to congratulate both you and Jack. You received the Bright and Beautiful Award for cleanup a year ago, and Jack got it this year.
I didn't get it. There's a group of people that got it.
Hey, I know when I see leadership, that's coming from you, Jack.
But it takes a village. I mean, we have Yellowstone River Parks Association helping, and there's associates in our smoke jumper group. They weren't crazy enough to jump out of airplanes, but they are out to help them. One of your neighbors is always volunteering, and people from YRPA helped a lot last year.
That's true, isn't it?
There's a lot of people helping us with the job. So.
Well, I'd like to let's hear about some cleanup that you've done.
So legacy trash, right? Which is our terminology for this. It's that material you mentioned. So back in the day, it wasn't illegal to do this, and we don't blame anybody for doing this, right? It was part of how people operated. It's our grandparents, maybe our great-grandparents who were the ones responsible for this, maybe even city administrators, right? The old Billings landfill was right down there at Colson Park on the riverbank. Yeah. And at the end of the day, they would come and set fire to that trash and hope that the spring runoff would take it all away, right? So we're dealing with that legacy, and that's part of having a community here. And we can. I mean, that's what we've learned. And Jack really is what's kind of inspired me to realize that there's a lot we can do just with hand tools. We're not out there with excavators. We're not taking apart riprap that does stabilize banks. All we're picking up is material that's washed up on islands, is hazards in the middle of river channels, and we're just using human power to basically do all this, and hand tools, right? You can tell them a little bit more about some of the work we do.
Yeah. Jack, I know you've gotten some pretty big tires out of it.
We've got some big tires out there with the help of a gas-powered winch, and Kayhan has bought tools for us. A battery-operated chop saw really speeded things up, and we learned that a high-lift jack, if you get the stuff up in the air, it's easier to cut up than it is wrestling in the mud with it. But we've come a long ways since we started about 4 years ago when I ran into Kayhan at Two Moon Park bringing out an old water heater with the help of Bruce Morey, and that led to working with him, and we started cutting up some of the stuff for the 2021 cleanup.
Yeah.
How do you haul it out of there?
We've done numerous things. The easiest thing, in 21, we cut up car bodies that were on an island at Clark's Island and just stacked them next to the river. And then in September, when they did the river cleanup, the boats came down and those students worked their tails off, and men and women both are carrying that stuff and filling up canoes and drift boats. And in fact, we had so much stuff we had to go back the next week with the help of BLM. They took their jet boat up and we took out a couple of loads that we weren't able to get that first day, or the day of the
You're
float.
getting help from Fish, Wildlife, and Parks too, aren't you?
We do get help from them, yes.
Yeah, they let us borrow some equipment, and they've spent days out on the river doing cleanup work as well. But I think there's kind of a gap here. There's no agency that really is mandated to do this, right? It's not BLM, it's not Forest Service. There's a lot of different agencies on this river.
You know how many? There's 18 federal and state agencies.
Okay. Yeah,
and that doesn't count the counties. Nobody's
and none of them are mandated, or
No.
part of their work is not really designed around taking care of this issue.
No.
So we're kind of filling a gap. And plus, by being out there, we're watching all the time. We're seeing what's happening on the river.
Yeah.
We're able to respond when things like the recent train wreck occurred. We're out there walking too and seeing really what's happening all the time.
Yeah. So here's a drift boat, well loaded. Oh my goodness.
So we have an annual day. And that's kind of where we started in the beginning. We would always have, one day a year, let's give back to the community. And it's grown from there. And it really, I think Jack, when I met Jack, it elevated us, right?
Jack is out there all the time, I know.
Yeah, and since meeting Jack, we've kept track of our numbers, our poundage, the number of tires, the amount of metal we recycle. We keep track of that every year. And it's grown incrementally. Since we've met Jack, it's really just taken off. So,
how much does a tire like that weigh, Jack? I mean, how do you get
that particular one in the bottom right is probably in the neighborhood of 300.
Yeah, that's one of the lighter ones.
Yeah.
The tractor tires aren't that heavy, actually. It's the mining tires. The mining tires can weigh up to 3,000 pounds. Yeah. So we really struggle. Some of these items, once they get in the river, people might say, who cares? What's the problem with the tire in the river? But there's been plenty of studies now that have shown the chemicals that are in tires to prevent them from breaking down actually are toxic to fish. And we all know there's a lot of science now about emerging microplastics and other forever chemicals in our waterways that are harmful to human health. But if you think about the volume of this material that's in the river, it starts to add up. That it really makes an impact. So, a lot of this we can do by hand, but we already started to use, as Jack mentioned, power winches to kind of tip material up, empty it out, and winch it, further out of the river channel.
These tires too? They get full of mud, don't they?
Yes, they do.
What do you do? Get the mud out of them?
Yes.
It's just to get one semi-truck tire out of the river could take an hour, right? So if we can prevent these from getting in the river, some of this is legacy trash, but some of it's also new or being placed on banks for the river to take.
Do you think there is much new stuff being dumped in?
There's still a fair amount of new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, particularly plastics, right? Microplastics and all these. We pick up a lot of plastic. It doesn't add into a lot of pounds. Our greatest pounds are metal, but there's a lot of plastic and sleeping bags and blankets and all of that's microplastics.
You found a tombstone one year.
Found tombstone. We have a lot of interesting items. So this is just this year, 2024. So it's a record year for us, 85,000 plus pounds.
Oh my God.
Many different community members helped with this, right? 433 tires, and a summary of the 18 years is over 300,000 pounds.
Isn't that amazing?
And more than 1,500 tires. And this year, since meeting Jack, we started doing a lot of targeted projects. We would pick a spot that really needed many days of work and many people, and those are now happening from, we were out this year in December, right? So December, anytime we can get on the water, Jack's been out there the last month on shores, doing work. So anytime we can be out there now, we're almost year round, right? A couple months out.
We can't do that by ourselves. We get people like Mike, who shuttled us in December.
Once in a while I'm able to.
And your wife and his neighbor got our vehicles down, so when we floated down, and with the YRPA allowed us to take out the boat on their property, and they did a lot of cleanup last year. The day of the float, they had, I think, 30-some people scouring an island down there, cleaning it up. Not all their property, but they took a lot of material out.
Do you get any pushback from landowners?
So, well, we have to get permission. If we're working with landowners, we have to get landowner permission. I mean, the biggest project we did on private land was the tire site, and that's a slide right after this one. But this was a site this year, an island that we went to, and I've looked at these items for about 6 years. This is a whole sugar beet harvester that's out on an island, and a huge double axle trailer, and there were a lot of house parts as well. So Jack and I went out there for several days chopping all this material up, and then we did our first ever jet boat cleanup day. So there's a lot of other people, our community day is a float day right through the heart of Billings. And the jet boat day lets us go further downriver. We now cover from Reed Point all the way to the Bighorn River.
Have you guys got the jet boat?
The Yellowstone River Research Center has a jet boat now. We've had one for 3 years, and that's also really helped us increase our cleanup.
It gives you a farther reach, doesn't it?
For sure,
yeah. So, Jack, how do you cut something up like the chop saw?
That's a chop saw is being used to cut that up, and it took 3 days to complete that because the batteries only last a certain period of time, and that trung was 1/2-inch steel.
Yeah,
and
this is really
it takes
old
about a battery to cut through that. So we exhausted the batteries, but we get exhausted about the same time.
I was going to say,
we run out of batteries.
Jack keeps wanting to buy more batteries. I was like, our body batteries don't last that long, right? Let's not buy any more batteries.
But the final day, the day that we took the jet boats down, the third day, we got those axles cut off on both sides of that differential, and they rolled those tires to the boats, and that differential, I think, broke the bottom out of the outer sled that we were sliding it to the river, because that was at least 100 yards from the river.
Yeah, you mentioned how do we move this? It's wheelbarrows, it's sleds, it's just, again, hand tools basically for the most part.
They used to have tire dumps, and you've got some pictures of that.
This is a Google Earth image. So from Google Earth, if you can see tires, that means a lot of those tires are pretty big. So this is an old back channel. It's on private property. The landowner is not the responsible party for this, and said that when they bought the property, there was actually a lot more tires on it. So every year, when the river gets high, it comes in and harvests some of these tires and sends them downriver, and then we have to pick them up and dig them out of banks downriver. So we thought, let's just go to the source. We got landowner permission for this, and we spent another, actually 5 days probably. We had 3 during one period, and then we went back a couple days later. So with many people, lots of volunteers came and helped. We had to get some hand-powered winches, but it was, I don't know if I had the stats on here or not. That's a medium one that we pulled out. We pulled out 2 of the tires we pulled out. There were 2,500 pounds, I believe, right? Yeah.
I suppose people just figure, well, we're not going to hurt anything. You can throw it in the river.
Yeah, I mean,
what the heck was it?
The river took it away, right, back in the day. So these are old dump sites. In this one site, we pulled out more than 300 tires, more than 15,000 pounds of tires, right? And we know there are other sites like this. So we really want to work with private landowners. Again, we're not placing blame. We just want to help people. If they're willing to let us come out there, we'll take care of a problem that's on your property.
I would prefer to get them before they get full of mud.
That would be ideal.
That would be ideal.
Before they wash down. And some of these things, like the beet harvester and those trailers, they're dangerous to river rafters.
They are.
And people
They
floating
could
the
rip
river
the bottom
or
out of a
driving.
rubber raft easily.
Yep.
Not good for a drift boat either.
And as you said, we have more and more recreational use. If we want to keep Montana this beautiful place to come recreate and enjoy the outdoors, this is something we need to do.
Well, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, 20,000 pounds by the time we got all those tires out of that one site.
A little bit more on that. What do you do with the tires?
Well, so far the city of Billings has been very gracious and allowed us to dispose of these for free. Now, I don't know if that's going to continue. We may need donations to help support the city of Billings, but the city of Billings is concerned about water quality, right? We get our drinking water from this river, so we are helping the community in that manner, and that's why I believe they've led us so far, and I am very thankful for that.
Do you get many donations?
We do, yeah, from a lot of different organizations, many different groups. Yeah, help. Every year it's a little bit different, but we have often some continuing bigger donations to help support the students being out there, to help support us with, a lot of it's just the transportation costs, right, getting to and from the river, but also the cutting blades that we go through and the tools. It really adds up, actually.
You know, the Yellowstone River, I mean, as you guys know, I mean, we put our railroad along the river, interstate highways along the river. We put our communities along the river.
Pipelines under the river.
Pipelines under the river. So we've had a lot of spills, train wrecks, and things like that. And those are not benign to this Yellowstone River, are they?
No. And, you know, there's assessments each time this happens, but one of the challenges is we often don't have enough data before these happen to be able to really assess them well. But we aren't looking at the cumulative effects, right? We're not looking at the long-term effects and the cumulative effects. And since just 2011, we've had 4 hydrocarbon-related disasters, right? They're all quite different, actually. We have 2 big pipeline spills. We've had an asphalt train spill, and now we've just recently, a few days ago, a coal spill that all are contributing hydrocarbons to this river. And those have heavy metals in them. They have forever chemicals in them, plus the effects of, you know, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, and all of those are harmful to this ecosystem.
So what do we need to do to understand these things better and what the impacts of them are?
We need to be out there when they happen to really understand. We need to have quicker and better response times. I know after each one of these we learn, and the agencies get better, and I think we learned a lot after the Exxon, the first one that happened in 2011. But we also, as you mentioned, we have 3 refineries here, and all these pipelines, these are gonna keep happening. So we need to be ready to respond quickly, efficiently, and really take care of the ecology, right? Take care of the understanding of the ecology before and after these. And I believe we should be studying the long-term and cumulative effects. That's a really critical component that's currently not being addressed.
Yeah.
So that, you know, I've got kind of 3 examples here that I just pulled from news sources. You know, these hit international news when these happen. Some of the, because again, as you mentioned, the Yellowstone is this really iconic river,
It's
right?
iconic. Everybody knows
Comes
Yellowstone.
out of Yellowstone Park, yeah.
Yeah, Yellowstone
so
Park.
they're pretty critical. This is the most recent one, the train wreck down at near Miles City. You know, each of these cars. Do you know how much they hold? How much coal they hold?
I don't.
I had to look it up. So it says when they drive by, it says 110 tons. Usually, there's a little bit of variation there, but that's 200,000 pounds, right? That's a lot of material, even if only partially. And you can see there's at least 6 cars that dump towards the river. So how much coal went in the river? It could be, we don't know. I haven't seen any reports. We haven't seen reports even on what the cleanup effort was down there. So we don't know how much went in the river. And in fact, I was going to talk to Jack after our meeting today is, should we go down and look and see what's happened here, right? Because we spent a lot of time after the Reed Point train wreck trying to see what are the lingering effects, right? With the oil spill, with the Exxon oil spill, less than 5% is recovered, right,
yeah.
in the oil spills.
Yeah.
The asphalt spill, about 50% was recovered in the first year.
Do you think it was that much?
It was close to 50%, yeah. So
it took a lot of effort, though.
A lot of effort. Even this last year, you know, the year after they stopped doing recovery, our team picked up more than 1,000 pounds of asphalt. Plus, there was other materials in that train wreck. There was sulfur and there was scrap metal. There was one car of aluminum and circuit board scrap that is still in the river, potentially 200,000 pounds. There's no documentation of how much of that material went in the river anywhere, and no information that I've seen how much has been cleaned up. We've picked up 300 pounds.
Do we know
it's a small piece of it, right?
I mean, aluminum doesn't seem like there'd be any impact.
Aluminum's fairly benign, but again, it is trash in our river, right?
Yeah,
and there's circuit board chips in there, and the circuit board chips have lots of different heavy metals, and also they're treated with brominated fire retardants, which is a known carcinogen. So a lot of these are you know, the more, again, cumulative effects, right? More and more of this material is getting into the rivers.
Yeah.
These are sites that we haven't been able to address yet. So these are those mining tires that get a Google Earth image. Those are, you know, multiple thousands of pounds of each one there sitting on the river bank.
They're sitting there.
It's not illegal to set them on the riverbank,
Yeah.
but the river is going to take them, and it's illegal to dump them in the river. So that's kind of a gray area. But let's work with
see how the rivers. You see how the river's working its way towards it.
And one is already in the river there, right below that that red mark. And you can see the scale, the size of these. There's another site that we found that has more than 400 tires piled within 10 yards of the river, right? Just enormous. I'm sure the landowner probably got paid to pile those up there from somebody, took those tires from somebody, right? And
this is legal.
As far as I can tell, this has been there for years. Nothing is happening. So enforcement might be a factor here. But again, what we would like to do is just work with the landowners.
Yeah.
We know this is happening. Let's work with the landowners and address these issues, right?
I think that's a good.
And it's a lot of effort. It'll still take us a lot, but I think we're willing to do it, right?
Right.
We'd rather get it now before it's in the river because it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
We don't know how to get the 3,000-pound tires. We can't get out of the river. You can't cut them up. They're 40-ply tires. I can look up the serial numbers and see how much they weigh. We're actually talking to the Air National Guard here about potentially having them do a training exercise and lifting some of those out of the river. So that'd be an exciting, fun day for the community and a way for them to help us out with this issue. That's you, Mike.
Oh, there I am.
So,
Caught me working, huh?
Jack keeps trying to mention this, but we have so many community partners on this, right? We're kind of helping the community, I think. We're raising awareness, but also trying to let people know that there's something you can do, right? There's a lot of people right now that are feeling pretty stressed about what's happening with all our public lands. This is a way you can give back. I think, when I go out, I'm like, this is something I can actually do right here.
It's amazing project. Well, I'm glad you caught me working there sometime.
Yeah. I think that was part of your packing experience on that dude ranch you worked on. In fact, if you look there's a bucket on both sides. You can't see the one on the other side, but there was very little room for the driver to get on there. But we had hauled some stuff with a sled, and it was a long haul, dragging it back over those rocks. Actually, it drags better on rocks than it does the sand. But,
and that's a Dover. That's a Dover Park.
That was Dover Island. Yeah.
Well, I tell you guys, as you well know, Yellowstone River is really, really unique. There's no other river like it in the United States, and it's still relatively in good shape.
Yeah, for sure.
But the pressures on it are huge. We got climate change. It's going to change the water flows in it more when we don't want more, and less when we want more.
Absolutely.
And the impacts of it as our communities build are going to be huge. Yeah. And it's good that we've got a couple of characters like you guys who are really working hard to defend this river, and I really do appreciate it. And Kayhan, I want you back to tell me about research.
Well, I hope what we're doing is again raising that awareness, right? Raising awareness.
I think you are.
And I think that 35 community organizations that have been taking part in this are kind of an example of that, right? The community does care.
Thank you for your work, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.